Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. An honor to meet you in this great annual meeting. Thank you for the committee and Dr. Chuang, who has invited. As we know that cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death in the world, where the main cause is lifestyle, including diet. There are many factors that influence the diet, ranging from culture, belief, economy, and the food industry revolution and technology to the borderless. So, I would like to share about dietary recommendation for reducing cardiovascular disease. In this meeting, firstly, I will briefly explain about Indonesia. Secondly, I will describe cardiovascular disease in Indonesia, especially about its prevalence and risk factors. Thirdly, I will explain consumption food of risk and protector factors, and then I will describe a little bit about Indonesia question and food pattern relating to the risk of CVD. Fourthly, I will talk about Indonesian government programs regarding to prevention of CVD. Finally, I will talk about dietary recommendation. This is a map of Indonesia. My country is a vast and densely populated archipelagic country. Indonesia located on the equator between continent Asia and Australia, Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean. Indonesia consists of 17,508 islands with a land area of 1,905 million kilometers square, an ocean area 2 times the land area. Therefore, Indonesia is called a maritime or nautical and agricultural country. The big island is Java, Sumatra, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, and Papua. And the popular island in the world is Bali. There are also 2 small island groups called Maluku and Nusa Tenggara. Even we have 700 languages, our unified language and the official language is Bahasa Indonesia, or it's called Bahasa. We have more than 300 distinct ethnic. In terms of religion, we have Muslim, Christian, Hindu, and Buddha. The Muslim is the largest religion. And we are a country with 2 seasons. Based on data released by the Indonesian Central Bureau of Statistics, Indonesia population census in 2020 reached 270.20 million people. That increase of 32.56% from 2010. The productive age is about 70.72%. Males 50.58% and females 49 and 40%. And elderly is 9.78%. The population growth rate is 1.25%. From the population pyramid graph, Indonesia entering period of the demographic bonus phase. With the composition dominated by the working age population, Indonesia has an opportunity to maximize the demographic bonus as long as the population is in healthy and productive status. This blue graph shows the composition of population based on the generation name, starting from pre-boomer until post-Gen Z. About cardiovascular disease in Indonesia, WHO in 2016 states that 73% of deaths in Indonesia are due to non-communicable diseases, of which 35% related with cardiovascular disease. Based on National Basic Health Research data in 2018 showed that the national prevalence of cardiovascular disease for all group age is 1.5%, or 1,070,219 people. The elderly have a high risk to compare with the younger age. CVD is more common in female than male, and in urban area more than rural area. Stroke is the disease that leading causes death in the cardiovascular disease group. Prevalence by province in Indonesia range from 4.1 until 14.7, with the national prevalence number is 10.9%. This number increased about 56% from 2013. The trend of the incident stroke increases in line with the age. The proportion of male and female almost in the same, but more in urban area than the rural area. As we know, one of modifiable risk factors is behavior or lifestyle, such as unhealthy diet, lack of physical activity, smoking, and alcohol consumption. Unhealthy behavior has an impact on increasing blood pressure, blood sugar, blood lipid, overweight, and obesity. According to the Indonesian National Development Planning Agency, of the 10 risk factors that most affected death and disability adjusted life year in 2007 until 2017 were poor diet, followed by high blood pressure, high fasting blood sugar, and tobacco or smoking behavior, which indicated a risk for cardiovascular disease and diabetes. I will explain a poor diet pattern after this. The result of Hussein's study on the rhesus test data of 2013 showed that hypertension contributed 20 to 25% of all coronary heart disease and 36 to 42% of all stroke, both in male and female. While female with hypertension on high risk to coronary heart disease and stroke. Rhesus data in 2018 showed an increase in hypertension compared in 2013. The contribution of hypertension as a CVD risk factor was 29.6%. The proportion of individuals with hypertension increased with age. Rhesus data in 2018 showed an increase in hypertension compared with 2013. The decontribution of hypertension as CVD risk factor was 29.6%. The proportion of individuals with hypertension increases with age. The proportion of individuals with hypertension increases with age. Total cholesterol level are also important risk factor for CVD. In even or coronary heart disease, the risk now, total cholesterol level are also important risk factor for CVD. In the event of coronary heart disease, the risk for male was slightly higher than female, while in the case of stroke, the female will with cholesterol higher than men. Smoking in men is a substantial risk factor for the vascular event of stroke. In this slide, we see the smoking is second risk for coronary heart disease and stroke in male. And based on data, Rhesus data on 2018, smoking of age more than 10 years old is about 28.8%. Overweight female are more at risk of CVD than men, as male. Overweight female are more at risk for CVD than male. The number of overweight and obesity increases from year to year. In 2018, the proportion of overweight female are more at risk of CVD than male. The number of overweight and obesity increases from year to year. In 2018, the proportion of overweight and obesity were 13.6% and 20.8%, respectively. Obesity contributes about 19 to 43% of to the risk of the cardiovascular disease. Diabetes mellitus male have a higher risk for of the incidence of coronary heart disease than female. Diabetes mellitus. Diabetes male have a higher risk of the incidence of coronary heart disease and stroke than female. From Discussed data, we shows that increasing in prevalence diabetes mellitus during 2013 to 2018. The national prevalence is 10.9%. In Indonesia, we use Perkany or Endocrinologists Association consensus, and there is a little bit a difference between 2011 and 2015. And this shows in 2018, with the consensus Perkany 2011, it's about 8.5%, and using the 2015 Perkany is about 10.9%. If we look to the physical inactive, from the risk test data, we can see that in 2018, more individuals with less active. In 2018, more individuals with less physical active. In physical inactive data, we can see that for physical inactive data from Discussed 2018, we see that there is an increasing of the prevalence physical inactivity than 2013. 2013 is about 26.1%, and 2018 the prevalence is 33.5%. Global research on burden disease states that poor diet is factor behind cases of hypertension, diabetes, obesity, and other components of cardiovascular disease. Excessive intake of processed food is associated with overweight. Consumption of soft drinks is associated with obesity in adolescents. The use of high carbohydrate refined foods such as white flour, added sugar, or to food and beverages, chips and crackers, especially those consumed as snacks, adds to the high risk of CVD. The high intake of instant noodle and sugary drink also causes an increasing in a C-reactive protein. It's a marker of cardiovascular risk. Unhealthy food that is cheap and easy to get. Attractive packaging. Unhealthy food that is cheap and easy to get, attractive packaging and ready to eat, as well as an intensive advertising in television and social media, affect the high consumption of the poor diet. Unhealthy food that is cheap and easy to get, attractive packaging and ready to eat food, as well as an intensive advertising in television and social media, affect the higher consumption of poor diet. This slide describes the consumption of food that can be increased the risk of CVD and the food that can be a protector CVD. The blue box shows the Indonesian Balanced Nutrition Guide. And based on a survey of individual food consumption in Indonesia in 2014 showed that 11.8% of Indonesian people consume more than 50 grams sugar per day, and 53.7% of Indonesian people consume salt more than 5 grams per day, and fat, an intake of fat in Indonesian people is about 27%. This blue box shows Indonesian Balanced Nutrition Guide, and the left side shows the high consumption of, and the left side is high consumption of food, and the left side shows consumption of food of risk factor, and the right side shows the low consumption of protective food. A survey of individual food consumption in Indonesia in 2014 showed that 11.8 of Indonesian people, 11.8% of Indonesian people consume sugar more than 40 grams per day. And 53.7% of Indonesian people consume salt more than 5 grams per day. And from the fat, 27% of Indonesian people consume about more than 67 grams per day. However, when we view from per capita consumption data today, there is a tendency for increasing sugar intake above 50 grams per day. The thing that worries is saying the consumption of salt in Indonesia, almost half of Indonesian people consume. The thing that worries us is saying the consumption of salt. Almost half of Indonesia people consume salt beyond the recommended limit. It means that more than 5 grams per day. The thing that worries us is seeing the consumption of salt. Almost half of Indonesian people consume salt intake more than 5 grams per day. The salt comes from cereal and its processed, and this salt come cereal and its processed and spicy and its processed. 27% of Indonesians consume fat intake more than recommendation. If we look from the consumption of sugar, salt, and fat together, we find that 29.7% of Indonesian people exceeds the recommendation. From the protective food, such as fish, the average consumption of fish and its processed food about 78.4 grams per person per day. It's slightly lower than the recommendation. Meanwhile, food production in Indonesia is much higher than what is consumed. Meanwhile, food production in Indonesia is much higher than what is consumed. In Indonesia, intake of fruits and vegetables is low. In this test data, in 2018, only less than 5% of Indonesian people consume vegetables and fruits more than 5 grams per day. From this slide, we see that the food consumption in Indonesia is at risk of increasing incidence of CVD. In this slide, I would like you to know the traditional Indonesian meals. Indonesian meals menu pattern consists of rice as a staple food, plus 1 or 2 main savory dishes. Mostly, the dishes in Indonesia taste salty, and then plus condiments. Typically, savory dishes in Indonesia is chicken. Typically, savory dishes in Indonesia are chicken, beef, fish, tempeh, or tofu and vegetables. These set Indonesian meals, nasi pecel, represent the menu preference of Indonesian. It consists of rice, 2 savory dishes, chicken and tempeh, and vegetable and condiment, crunchy peanuts. And as well, if we see from the nasi urap, also we can see from nasi urap, rice, chicken and coffee, vegetable, eggs and tempeh and shrimp crackers. The following pictures is a variety of Indonesian dishes that come from various regions but are popular and favored nationally. The red dot, orange, the green, and the black plus purple dots are indicate the content of food groups that must be considered. The red dot indicate the using of high oil, and the orange dot indicates that those meal contents of the orange dot indicates that the meals use the thick coconut milk in cooking. The black dots indicates that these meals using the high-fat proteins such as rib eye. The purple dots show that these meals using a high of sugar. It's tasty, very sweet. Based on the profile of Indonesia that has been described earlier, we see that Indonesia has quite a challenge to reduce CVD. Modifiable risk factors such as high intake of risky foods but low intake of protective food, activity and increased smoking will raising the incidence of overweight, obesity, hypertension, and diabetes mellitus. Then this might affect to coronary heart disease and stroke. It is requires sporadic and comprehensive movement for Indonesia, namely modification of lifestyle. The necessary of modification are the necessary modifications are eat a diet that contains more protective food such as fish, fruit, vegetables, and the diet based on the calorie needs, based on personal food preference, cultures, and other nutritional therapy that is being carried out. The necessary modification are first is eat a diet that contains more protective food such as fish, fruit, and vegetable, nuts, and so on. Second, diet based on calorie needs, based on personal food preference, based on culture and other nutritional therapy that is being carried out. Third, the diet with more attention intake of natrium, fibers, and low fat. Awareness is an important thing in reducing the burden of cardiovascular disease. Education and counseling for lifestyle change are needed deeply. Indonesian government has done some programs for tackling non-communicable diseases, including CVD. The programs, namely GERMAS and Food-Based Dietary Guidelines and Gemar Ikan or like to eat fish. GERMAS or the Healthy Living Community Movement is a systemic and planned action carried out jointly by all components of the nation with awareness. GERMAS, the Healthy Living Community Movement, is a systemic and planned action carried out jointly by all components of nation with awareness, willingness, and ability to behave in a healthy manner to improve in the quality of life. GERMAS focus on three aspects. GERMAS, the Healthy Living Community Movement, is a systemic and planned action carried out jointly by all components of the nation with awareness, willingness, and ability to live healthy for everyone to realize the higher degrees of public health. GERMAS focus on three aspects. Do physical activity, eat fruits and vegetables, and check health regularly. 6 activities of GERMAS is increase physical activity, improving clean and healthy life behavior, provision of healthy food and accelerated nutrition improvement, increase prevention and early detection of disease, improving environment quality, and improve education of healthy living. Tumpang gizi seimbang, a rounded pyramid-like shape, is the dietary guideline for Indonesian people. This pyramid shape imitates the shape of tumpeng. Tumpeng is specific Japanese dish which served in a cone shape and arranged along with the side dishes. Tumpeng is often served at celebration or Thanksgiving events in Indonesia. Tumpeng gizi seimbang describe a daily food composition that inform types and amounts of nutrients in accordance with the body's need. There are four principes. That is the first food. There are four principes of tumpeng gizi seimbang. That is the first food. There are four principles of tumpeng gizi seimbang or balanced nutrients. That is the first food safety, physical activity, and weight monitoring, including 5 food groups and their recommended portion. Tumpeng gizi seimbang has 4 levels. The bottom level is the staple food, above with fruits and vegetables. The next level is source of protein, and the top is limiting the intake of cells, and the top is limiting of salt, sugar, and oil, plus drinking white water 8 glasses, and then base of the core consists of activity, washing hands, and monitoring weight. Tumpeng gizi seimbang is guide a daily food composition that inform types and amounts of nutrient in accordance with the body's need. There are 4 principles. That is the first of food safety, physical activity, and weight monitoring, including 5 food groups and their recommended portion. Tumpeng gizi seimbang has 4 levels. The bottom level is staple food. The next level is fruit and vegetables, and next level is protein source, and the top level is limit to use about salt, sugar, and oil, and plus recommended to drink water about 8 glasses. And the base of the cone consists of activity, hand washing, and monitoring weight. There are 10 nutrition messages and tumpeng gizi seimbang. Eat variety of food, eat plenty of vegetables and fruit, eat high protein food, eat a variety of staple food, limit consumption of sweet, salty, and hot food, eat breakfast every day, drink enough safe water, read food label, wash your hands, and perform adequate physical activity. A plate guide we call isi piring makanku, or the content of my plate. These guidelines are the application of tumpeng gizi seimbang. This plate illustrated the recommended proportion of food groups to be consumed each meal. This my plate illustrated the recommended proportion of food groups to be consumed in each meal. The Minister of Health of the Republic Indonesia, as in the Regulation number 28 of 2019, established that the average energy adequacy is 2,100 kilocalorie per person per day at the level of consumption, while the protein is 57 grams per person per day. Recommended dietary allowance for proteins is about 10 until 15% of total energy, and fat about 20 to 25% of total energy that comes from 10% of saturated fat and 10 to 15% from unsaturated fat. In addition, the nutrient that need to be limited is natrium, sugar, and oil. This set menu is represented in this slide. There is a set Indonesian menus represent of recommended dietary allowance, tumpeng gizi seimbang, and my plate for 1 meal. The energy is about 700 kilocalories, consist of rice, 1.5 portion, fish or exchange if 1 portion, tempeh or exchange if 1 portion, papaya or other fruits 1.5 portion, and vegetable 1.5 portion. Dietary recommendation for at-risk individuals such as those with hypertension, obesity, dyslipidemia, and diabetes mellitus follow a recommendation of ACC and AHA and DES diet. Dietary recommendation for at-risk individuals such as those with hypertension, obesity, dyslipidemia, and diabetes mellitus follow recommendations from the ACC and AHA as well as the principle of DES diet. Lifestyle recommendations include consuming vegetables and fruits, whole grains, low-fat poultry, peanuts, and consuming low-fat milk, low sugar, sugary drink, and red meat. The composition of nutrients is adjusted to the condition of each individual. For example, if dyslipidemia present, so the for example, if dyslipidemia present, fat, for example, if dyslipidemia present, fat, especially saturated fat, is less than 7%, and polyunsaturated fat is maximum of 10% from total energy, and reduce of the calories from trans fat, and try to reduce percent from calories from trans fat. And cholesterol is recommended less than 200 milligrams per day. We're still doing the recommendation to reduce cholesterol less than 200 milligrams, considering that food containing cholesterol generally also contain high saturated fat. And for other conditions, if edema and in terms of natrium, if edema and in terms of natrium, if edema or hypertension present, should be reduced to 1,500 milligrams. Indonesia has some fermented food to prevent CVD. Among others is tempeh and fermented glutinous black rice. Tempeh is a traditional Indonesian food that has started worldwide. Tempeh is fermented from soybean, which can be regarded as a superfood because of many health benefits. Tempeh contains protein and low fat. Because it is made from the whole soybean, so tempeh has the fiber also. Tempeh contains high protein and low fat. Because it's made from whole soybean, tempeh contains dietary fiber. Tempeh is rich in calcium and iron as well. As a result of soybean fermentation, tempeh is possible as a good source of protein. As a result of soybean fermentation, tempeh is possible as good source of prebiotic and good for digestive health. Tempeh also contains isoflavone. Another food ingredients being developed. Another fermented food is fermented glutinous black rice. This food contains functional food that plays a role in preventing heart disease. such as anthocyanin, phenols, and antioxidant activity, which is thought to be an effect on preventing metabolic syndrome. The nutritional value of these two products, the nutritional values of these two products are shown in this slide. Nutritional values of tempeh, nutritional values of black glutinous tape. As previously mentioned, Indonesia, with its diverse ethnic, has various types of food that are unique and favored by the Indonesian people. Unfortunately, some of these dishes contain of high fat and or high sugar or high salt. One of efforts to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease through a culinary dietetic. It means that how we try to make over one of the efforts to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease through a culinary dietetic. It means that how we try to modify Indonesian food or Indonesian cuisine. It means that how we try to modify Indonesian food that are high in fat and sugar to be healthier. Among others, through the use of herbs and spices that are abundant in Indonesia and cooking techniques. Garlic, turmeric, ginger, and cinnamon are rich in antioxidants. And scientific studies suggest that they are also potent as anti-inflammatory, which has a good effect on lowering lipids and blood sugar. Moreover, it has a low calories and are relatively not expensive. Energy for day one menu, almost 2,000 kilocalories, and for the day two menus, it's about 2,100 kilocalories. And the nutrient composition, carbohydrate 63%, protein 15%, and fat 20%, and almost resembles in day two. Energy in day one menu is about 1942 kilocalories, and in day two menus is about 2056 kilocalories. The nutrient composition is almost same. In day two is a bit little in protein and fat. And other nutrients seems to be in accordance with the recommendation. This is the day one Indonesian modified menu. We use the rice as a staple food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Animal protein sources are chosen from low-fat proteins such as we use rice as a staple food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Animal protein, we choose a low-fat protein such as egg white, fish that contains of omega-3. And for vegetable protein, we use tofu and tempeh, and then oncom. Sterol and stenol are obtained from vegetable and fruit, as well as being a source of antioxidant. The breakfast menu is steamed rice. Let me explain a little bit about the menu. This is oats, white egg with stick sauce. And this is steamed tofu cakes or fricado tahu, kukus. And the vegetable is chapchai. Japchae itself is becoming Indonesian cuisine which come from Chinese origin. Japchae itself is an Indonesian cuisine which comes from Chinese cuisine. Japchae means dishes that contains of 10 elements of vegetable and protein. But in this menu, we only use the but in this menu, I use vegetables only. But the name still Japchae. And the breakfast, we have steamed rice, a macaroni fish soup, stir-fried tempeh, salted mixed vegetable. It's a bit different with japchae, and fresh vegetable and sliced pineapple. For dinner, we have steamed rice with ikan lilit. Ikan lilit, ikan lilit or convoluted fish is a typical dish from Bali. Ikan lilit or convoluted fish is a typical dish from Bali, which originally used the coconut milk, but in this case, we changed with the skim milk. For, for mid-morning, we use pisang kukus or steamed banana. The type of pisang we call is pisang tanduk. And for mid-afternoon, we use pear. The cooking method is stir-fry, boiling, steaming, and burning. Distribution of food proportion based on Indonesia My Plate or isi piringku. And for mid-morning snack, we give a pisang kukus or steamed banana. The type of pisang is from pisang tanduk. And for the afternoon, or I mean mid-afternoon, we use a fruit here. Like the first day menu, the second day menu also follow. Like the first menu, the day two menu is also follow My Plate or isi piringku. Still, similar with the first day menu, there are 3 times meals: breakfast, lunch, and dinner, plus 2 times of snack. It's typically of Indonesian menu pattern. For breakfast, we use cassava as a staple food and rice for lunch and dinner. For breakfast, we use a cassava as a staple food. Cassava is widely used or widely consumed by Indonesians, but not as but mostly as a snack. For breakfast, we use cassava. And for breakfast, we use cassava as a staple food. Cassava is widely consumed by Indonesians, but as a snack, but mostly as a snack. And for lunch and dinner, we use rice as a staple food. Animal proteins are chicken, eggs, and fish. We use spicy and anti-inflammatory herbs as well as ginger, turmeric, or ginger and turmeric. We use spicy and herbs who have anti-inflammatory effects, such as ginger and turmeric. Let me explain this. Let me explain the menus. This is singkong kukus or steamed cassava, and for protein, braised chicken soy sauce, and we use tofu as tofu, and we have vegetable. Sorry. Let me explain the menu. This is a singkong rebus. Let me explain the menus. This is a cassava, steamed cassava, and this is braised chicken soy sauce, and beef tofu vegetable cakes, then stew of vegetables, then our original fruit salad or snake fruits. For lunch, we have steamed rice and tempeh in turmeric sauce and gado-gado. Gado-gado is almost a gado is mixed vegetable with boiled egg and peanut sauce. And for dinner, we have steamed rice, ikan pindang or simmered fish, roasted potato cakes, and salted mixed vegetables, and fresh lettuce and papaya. Sorry, it's not pineapple, but papaya. Ikan pindang, pindang is a cooking technique similar with simmering. Pindang is a cooking technique similar with simmering. Both onion, Pindang is cooking technique similar with simmering. First, boil the red onion, garlic, chili, turmeric, galangal, lemongrass until boiled, and then push. Pindang is a cooking technique similar with simmering. Boil red onion, garlic, chili, turmeric, galangal, and lemongrass. Then put the fish into it. Wait until soft. That is the how to make ikan pindang. And for mid-morning, we use fruit Ambon banana. It's typically in Indonesia, banana. For mid-morning, we use fruit Ambon banana. It's typically banana in Indonesia. And for mid-afternoon, for afternoon snack, we use spicy fruit salad, or we call it rujak. It contains of cucumber, pineapple, bangkwang, and spicy sauce from palm sugar and chili. Finally, let me to summarize my presentation. Indonesia is a large developing country with a variety of cultures and influence. The characteristic of its food. Unhealthy life of Indonesia is at risk of increasing the prevalence of cardiovascular disease in the future. Several attempts to prevent CVD have been done through GERMAS, Balanced Food Guide, and GERMARKAN programs. So, the role of dietitian and nutrition is needed to provide nutrition education and develop culinary dietetic in accordance to So, the role of dietitian and the role of Indonesian dietitian and nutritionist is needed to provide education and develop culinary dietetic in accordance with local culture. Thank you for your attention. Terima kasih.